Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Before we dive into the context of this video, I want to explain that this video, The Dragon Within Us, isn't part of the trilogy's voice acting performance. It's more like a symbolic reflection. This work was partly created by myself and an AI, so we both collaborated, exchanged ideas, but the actual voices were created by the AI. I just had the idea and directed it in a way. It's a conversation between two archetypes told through two voices, a male and a female. So this podcast explores how dragon symbolism reflects human nature, our duality, our instincts, and the inner power we often forget. You'll hear thoughts on culture, myth, the shadow self, and how these symbols shape the way we live, resist, and connect. It's less about storytelling, more about remembering what's inside us. So please take a moment, let the words reach beneath logic. Just feel, if you can, please. And here is the dragon within us. Please enjoy.
Some people just get up and go to work. Others have to fight a dragon to get there. Today, we're diving deep into the dragons within us, those inner battles we face daily, what they mean, and how understanding them can transform our lives.
That's such a powerful metaphor. These aren't literal dragons, of course, but those metaphoric ones that burn us with shame, anxiety, and what psychologists call our not good enoughness.
Wait, so you're saying we all have these inner dragons?
Absolutely. According to recent psychological research, these inner dragons often represent our deepest fears and challenges. They're like the Dementors in Harry Potter, making us feel like things will never be okay again.
That's fascinating. And I noticed you mentioned Harry Potter. It seems like dragons show up everywhere in our stories and myths.
They do, and there's a reason for that. Dragons are among the oldest symbols in human mythology, appearing in stories across virtually every culture.
But they're not always portrayed the same way, right?
That's right. In Eastern cultures, particularly in China, dragons are actually seen as benevolent creatures, symbols of good fortune and wisdom. They're associated with rain, fertility, and life-giving powers.
Oh, that's so different from the Western view.
Exactly. In Western mythology, dragons are often portrayed as chaos incarnate, creatures that need to be conquered. But here's where it gets interesting. Both perspectives tell us something about our inner dragons.
How so?
Well, just like those Eastern dragons, our inner challenges can actually be sources of wisdom and strength when we learn to work with them rather than against them.
That's a really powerful perspective shift.
It is. And you know what Rainer Maria Rilke said? He suggested that perhaps all the dragons in our lives are actually princesses who are only waiting to see us act with beauty and courage.
That's beautiful. But how do we actually face these dragons?
The first step is recognizing that we're in a battle. When you're fighting a dragon, it's not supposed to be easy. This awareness itself can reduce the shame of struggling.
Right, because of course you're having a hard time. You're fighting a dragon.
Exactly. And just like in mythology, we don't have to face these dragons alone. Support groups, friends, mental health professionals, they can be our fellow warriors in this battle.
I love that idea of building a team to face our dragons.
And here's something fascinating. Studies show that people who engage with these complex inner narratives often display higher emotional intelligence.
Really? How does that work?
It's because facing our inner dragons requires us to understand different perspectives and navigate moral gray areas. It's like emotional weight training.
Oh, that makes so much sense. But what about when the dragons feel overwhelming?
That's when we need to remember that dragons in mythology often guard treasure. Our inner dragons might be protecting something valuable within us.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The dragon of perfectionism might be guarding our desire for excellence. The dragon of anxiety might be protecting us from genuine threats.
So it's not about slaying these dragons, but understanding them?
Exactly. In fact, psychological research suggests that trying to slay our inner dragons often just makes them stronger. Integration is the key.
What do you mean by integration?
It's about acknowledging these parts of ourselves and finding ways to work with them rather than against them. like in Eastern traditions, where dragons are seen as wise teachers.
That's fascinating. And it seems like different cultures have found different ways to do this.
Yes, in Chinese culture, for instance, dragons are seen as masters of transformation. They can navigate between heaven and earth, symbolizing our ability to transform our challenges into strengths.
So our inner dragons could actually be guides to transformation?
Precisely. They often appear strongest when we're on the verge of significant personal growth.
That's a powerful reframe of our struggles.
And it's backed by psychological research. When we face our inner dragons with curiosity rather than fear, we often discover new strengths we didn't know we had.
But it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. Like any mythological quest, it requires courage, persistence, and often help from others.
Speaking of help from others, what role does community play in this?
That's crucial. In mythology, dragon slayers never work alone. They always have allies, mentors, and guides. The same is true for our inner battles.
So we shouldn't try to face our dragons alone?
Absolutely not. The dragons might make you believe you should face them alone, but that's rarely the best approach.
What are some practical ways people can start working with their inner dragons?
One effective approach is mindfulness, simply acknowledging the presence of these dragons without trying to fight them or run from them.
That sounds challenging.
It is, but remember, in Eastern traditions, dragons are associated with wisdom and protection. When we approach our inner dragons with respect, they often have important lessons to teach us.
Can you give an example of such a lesson?
Sure, the dragon of self-doubt might teach us humility and the importance of continuous learning. The dragon of anger might show us where our boundaries need strengthening.
That's really interesting, turning these seemingly negative aspects into teachers.
Yes, and this approach is supported by modern psychology. When we resist or try to suppress these aspects of ourselves, they often grow stronger.
So what you're saying is, the goal isn't to get rid of our dragons?
No, it's about learning to dance with them, to understand their rhythms and work with their energy rather than against it.
That's such a different approach from the traditional slay the dragon narrative.
And it's often more effective. When we stop trying to slay our dragons and start trying to understand them, real transformation becomes possible.
How do people know they're making progress with their dragons?
Often, it's when they notice they can sit with uncomfortable feelings without being overwhelmed by them. When they can acknowledge their dragons without being consumed by them.
That sounds like a real milestone.
It is. And it's worth noting that this journey isn't linear. Some days the dragons are calmer, other days they're more active.
So it's about the long-term relationship with our dragons?
Exactly. Think of it as developing a working relationship with powerful allies rather than trying to vanquish enemies.
That's really powerful. Any final thoughts on working with our inner dragons?
Remember that every great hero in mythology had to face dragons. Your dragons are not a sign of weakness, they're an invitation to discover your own strength.
And maybe even find some treasure along the way?
Often the greatest treasures come from the dragons we were most afraid to face.
This has been incredibly insightful. Any last words for our listeners?
Yes, your dragons are part of your story. They're not there to be vanquished, but to be understood. And in understanding them, you understand yourself.
Thank you for this fascinating discussion. And remember, listeners, the next time you face your inner dragon, try greeting it with curiosity instead of fear. You might be surprised at what you discover.
And remember, in the words of Rilke, perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love.
Thanks for listening, and more importantly, for feeling. If something stirred inside you, it's because the strength was already there. Stay true to that voice within. All the best. Until next time.